Here are several challenging parts of becoming a pilot, along with actionable tips that I promise will make each of those things easier. And if we're just meeting, my name is Charlie Gassmeyer. I'm a commercially licensed pilot and aircraft owner here in Texas, and I make YouTube content to share the things I've learned along the way. So for the hardest thing you're probably going to experience becoming a pilot, I need you to flash back with me like 20 years. It's the night before my private pilot written exam. And that day I had taken a practice exam and I got a 71, really impressive score. 70 is passing, got a 71. So that night I'm like totally sweating bullets. I'm 15 years old. I'm freaking out, and my dad's a pilot, and I vividly remember, let me actually set the scene for you. It was kind of like this. I vividly remember sitting around the kitchen table late at night, and the only light was the kitchen light, like above our table. And I'm sitting there, and my dad's trying to help me, like, brush up on this stuff before the test the next morning. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, there is so much to know. Fast forward to the next morning, the sun comes up, and I go take the test. And I'm standing there in the flight school with my parents who came to pick me up because I'm 15, I can't even drive myself to the test. And so they're like, we're standing there kind of huddled up. And I remember my flight instructor went over to go check the test results. And all I remember is he turned around and he goes, big thumbs up, and he goes, yep, we're good. And we're like, oh, we did it. And I asked him, like, what'd I get? And he goes, we're good, you got a 70. It's like, oh man. Okay, so I passed like with the lowest passing score you can possibly get. But that's the thing, whether you're 15 or 55 or 85, the hardest thing you're probably going to experience becoming a pilot is all of the information you have to know. There is so much to learn. And there are lots of ways to learn all of that information between textbooks and now video courses. You could do in-person ground school either over a weekend or like one night a week for weeks in a row or whatever. Regardless of how you choose to learn it, there's a really, really important thing you need to learn early. And that's going to be how to actually memorize all of this stuff. So I was watching a really cool video the other day by Ali Abdaal, big fan of his channel. If you haven't watched it, it's worth watching. He's looking at all of this research that says, what is the best way to actually memorize things? And the most common ways that most of us study are to read, reread, maybe highlight, underline, take notes, or maybe even summarize the things that we are learning. These are the most common ways, but they're generally not very effective study methods because they're very passive. You're just like cramming and cramming and cramming things into your brain. So what is the most effective way? Well, it's basically anything that can force active recall. It's basically just a study technique that retrieves or pulls information from your memory rather than just passively reviewing it. So an example would be if you were going to take notes based on the things you're learning, it would be more effective to write questions in your notes and then write the answer. That way, when you're reviewing them, you're not just reading and rereading. You can actually ask yourself the question in your notes, attempt to answer it, and then read the correct answer. And in this situation, you're forcing active recall. This is why flashcards are so common and so effective because you can't even see the answer on the front of the card. You have to read it and attempt to answer it, and then you flip over and read the answer. There is really something magical that happens where instead of just cramming all of the information to your brain, you phrase it as a question. You say, okay, let me try to pull the answer out of my brain. And like, I'm not going to judge whether or not it's correct or how, like, I could be wildly off, or maybe I'm actually correct or closer than I think, but I'm going to pull out the information. I'm going to polish it up by looking at the correct answer. And after I've polished it, then I'm going to push it back into my brain rather than just constantly pushing and cramming information into your brain. Subtle difference, but the study suggests that it's actually a massive difference in outcome. And if you're looking for a helpful study tool, I did want to let you know that I recently launched my own set of private pilot study flashcards. There's over 300 cards in the set, and they're edited and approved by flight instructors. As of this filming, they have over 135 five-star reviews, and I actually just used them last week to study for my own flight review, and that was a really cool moment, and they were super, super helpful in that process. So you can check them out over at airplaneacademy.com/flashcards, or there's also a link down in the description if you'd like to learn more. I vividly remember early in my flight lessons, I got strapped in the front of a Super Cub, and I sat there and I took a deep breath and I go, okay, how do I start this thing? I remember asking my instructor that. He's like walking me through the checklist and whatever. Fast forward, like, a few dozen flight hours, I still vividly remember I was going with an instructor, and all of a sudden there was this massive flock of birds in front of us. And my instructor was looking down, like, I didn't even have time to react. And I just instinctively just like had the controls already, pulled some of the power out and kind of did this diving right turn to avoid him. It's kind of this last second thing. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like that is the first time that I just kind of did something instinctively out of muscle memory. I didn't really have to think about it. I just reacted and made the airplane do what I wanted it to. One of the hardest things about becoming a pilot is building that muscle memory in the airplane. You know, at first you have to really think hard about what every single instrument is, what every button is, and how to do things. But eventually you won't really have to think about that very hard anymore. So my advice to you is this: there is a real moment coming where you won't have to think about how to fly the airplane anymore. A lot of it is going to happen instinctively. Just like look back on when you were learning how to drive a car for the first time. Like I was freaked out to turn onto a road if there was anyone within like half a mile coming towards me, right? Let alone merging onto the highway. Remember how scary that was? And now all of us do that every single day in our sleep. We can do it while we're on the cell phone eating a cheeseburger, right? Like muscle memory is coming. Our brains are hardwired to develop muscle memory and to be able to do things, you know, repetitively. And so flying is obviously a little harder than merging onto the highway, but the point stands, like you'll be able to do this, I promise. I remember on one of my early lessons, we were coming back into the traffic pattern to land at the airport, and my instructor told me, hey, it's simple, like you just need to make a radio call real quick. Just announce, you know, Gillespie County Airport, Super Cub 24 Yankees on a 45 left downwind, landing runway 32, Gillespie County. And that might as well have been Chinese to me. I had no clue what that meant, and I just totally butchered it. And he's like, "Oh, you did great." I was like, "Did I? Like, I don't even think I spoke English right in what I just said." And so, talking on the radio or talking with air traffic control, for that matter, can be a really intimidating thing for most low-time pilots, and I know it was for me. I learned in the Dallas Class B airspace, and you're talking to approach control, tower, ground, and more. But I promise, like, hear me out. I promise that like 95% of all ATC communications is just the same crap over and over and over. It's just a new language and it's repetitive. I think the big thing to remember is that it really just follows the cadence of this. You're just addressing who you're talking to, then say who you are, where you are, and what you want to do. It's really just who you are, where you are, and what you want to do. So for this transmission, you know, Addison Grounds, Skylane 916 Delta Foxtrot is on taxiway Romeo, requesting taxi to runway 16 with information Charlie. Now, that sounds like a lot, but it doesn't have to be that complicated because it's just who you're talking to. You're addressing Addison Ground, that control frequency. You're saying who you are, Skylane 916 Delta Foxtrot, which will be placarded right in front of you so you can never forget who you are in the airplane, so that's easy. You're saying where you are, you're on taxiway Romeo, and what you want to do. I want to taxi to runway 16, and you have the current ATIS information. So you don't need to get too hung up in the cockpit if you realize like it's kind of just like real life conversations with, you know, saying who you are, where you are, and what you want to do. Like if you're calling the plumber, you say, hey, plumbing company, my name's Charlie. I live in Frisco and my water heater's busted. Like that follows that same cadence. And so talking on the radio in the plane echoes real life in that way. It's not some secret coded language. It might sound like that. Like if you listen to the radio and it sounds like they're saying a bunch of fancy stuff, most of it, if you kind of zoom in on it, most of it is actually just saying the phonetic pronunciation of letters. So like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, etc. That's just ABC, right? You're just saying the alphabet. So if they say like November 916 Delta Foxtrot, taxi to runway 16 via Alpha, most of the fancy stuff being said there is really just the phonetic alphabet. November is N, Delta, D is Delta, F is Foxtrot, A is Alpha. So they're basically just saying, hey, Charlie, you can taxi the runway on this certain taxiway. It's not that scary once you get used to it, I promise. When I was working on my commercial license, I quit twice. Something about it, just like life kept getting in the way one way or the other. Like bad weather followed by bad cold, followed by some travel or hectic work or whatever. And before you know it, I had fallen off the horse twice. But the third time, something was different. My wife sat me down. She said, look, we just need to dedicate like a focus season to you finishing this. Like, because if we're just kind of going at it like half speed, like you're not going to finish it, as history has proven. And so we decided to just like really sprint on this, to where most nights of the week she knew I was going to be studying. I was going to be taking early morning flight lessons. Like a lot of what we were doing just kind of revolved around me finishing my commercial. We try not to overcommit ourselves to other things, because like the only way to make time for something, like, you can't actually make time. the only way to make time is to not spend it on other things. And so we were aligned on that, try not to spend time on other things. And so for the first time, like I actually kept momentum in working on my commercial, and it worked. Like I got it done and it was awesome. And then a few months later, I also got my multi-engine commercial doing the same way through that kind of focused sprint. So you just need to know that life will get in the way of your pilot's license. Like that's how it works. So the best thing you can do is just really try to set up a focused season, like a focused sprint, to get this done. And so if you're serious about getting your private pilot's license, I highly recommend that you check out the video on the screen. I just share a lot of my honest advice and actionable tips for anyone starting out. So I hope it can help you. Hope you'll check it out, and I'll see you there.